Are you an intelligent, hardworking entrepreneur struggling to find your competitive advantage? Well then, boy, do we have a treat for you today, because today's guest is going to give you the third road to success. That's right, you're not always going to be able to outwork each and every other entrepreneur out there. You're also not going to be able to outsmart each and every other entrepreneur out there. There are millions of them and only one of you. But there is another tool that you can add to your arsenal to help you break away from the masses and get ahead. Find out what that tool is coming up next on Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy.
Today's guest is Jordan Harbinger, host of The Art of Charm, which is a top 50 podcast on iTunes and receives over 2.5 million downloads per month. Now, Jordan is a Wall Street lawyer turned social dynamic savant when he realized there was a unique path to the top of the corporate ladder, harnessing the power of body language, networking, persuasion, tonality, and influence formed to pack a powerful 5-finger charismatic punch. If you're a hardworking, intelligent entrepreneur looking for your unique competitive advantage, you do not want to miss what Jordan has to say.
Jordan, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm so glad you're with us. I've been looking forward to this episode for some time. Tell us, how did you go from Wall Street lawyer to The Art of the Charm?
The Art of Charm? Yeah,
Yes.
I went to Wall Street when I was a kid, of course. You know, now I'm 37, so I get to say kids now about people who are in their 20s. And when I was an actual kid, I kind of coasted by in school based on like what a lot of people who are listening to this did, which is like a little bit of I don't like saying natural smarts because it sounds a little arrogant, but essentially not being dumb gets you through high school in Michigan generally. Same thing with undergrad and stuff like that to a certain degree. But once I really got to harder classes in college, I realized everybody was just as smart, but they were drinking their face off so I could outwork them. So I went from having my competitive advantage be what we might call natural smarts or the ability to pay attention in class. And I lost that competitive advantage. That switched to the ability to outwork or the willingness to outwork everyone. And that was great. But then when I got to Wall Street, the problem was that everybody is willing to outwork everyone else and everybody has brains. So I had to come up with a natural or another competitive advantage that was not natural to me. And I really thought I was going to get in trouble. I thought I was going to get fired. You know, everyone's going to figure out I don't belong here. Classic imposter syndrome, which is something that a lot of high performers have. And we talk about that a lot on AOC on the podcast, Art of Charm. And I decided that I was probably done for. And the guy who had hired me, Dave, he was never in the office. And so he essentially he'd figured something out. Right. He was never in the office and yet he was a partner. And I thought, this is so strange. How does that happen? And I thought maybe if I can not be in the office, they won't find out I don't belong here and I'll last longer in the law game. And Dave took me out for coffee one day and he told me that the basics of why he wasn't in the office was he was bringing in deals. He billed a lot of money per hour when he billed clients, $800 to $1,000 an hour. But if he was out on the golf course, on a boat, at a charity event, at a dinner, playing racquetball or squash, he was bringing in $1 million law deals. And so his time was actually worth more. So that was pretty interesting to me. A secret sort of third path to getting to the top of the law game. But in the meantime, nobody else had any idea about it. So I could work on this area and maybe I wouldn't have to be in the office getting found out that I wasn't going to be the sharpest lawyer. And then by the time everybody else figured out they had to work on bringing in deals to make partner, I'd already be good at that. And in the meantime, I might be able to actually have a life. So that was very appealing to me. So I started working on body language, networking, psychology, persuasion, influence, the foundations of what we teach on the Art of Charm podcast. And I started implementing that, and that became the Art of Charm podcast, of course, and the business. And then when the economy took a downturn in 2008, Art of Charm as a business, as a training program, and as a show was doing so well, I was able to leave law and actually continue doing AOC full time.
And what do you recommend that most people start with? So often we hear about body language, right? That's the first step, the chicken and the egg. If you get the body language right, that produces the emotional state within. Any thoughts on that?
Yep, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. I think a lot of people, they try to psych themselves up and things like that, and that doesn't work. That does not work. So you can't really trick your brain for very long into figuring out that your body needs to do something. You really need to start with the body. That then goes to the brain and the mindset, which then informs the rest of what your body does.
Yeah, I'm always talking with clients about just presence. It's like, you see that guy that walks in the room or that lady that walks in the room. Sometimes you don't even see them. You can just sense that they're there. They just have this air about them. They're grounded. They're centered. They're quiet. I think it's so often I see clients that if their body language is off, it throws their entire game off. You talk about emotional intelligence. Talk a little bit about that.
What do you want me to talk about? Emotional intelligence is a huge subject. I'm open to it, but it's a big topic.
Well, if you were in the hiring, a lot of people say, okay, I want intellectual knowledge or I want emotional intelligence. Is it a 50-50 skew for employers? What should they be valuing more?
Well, it sort of depends, right? Because if you're hiring young people, you've got to look for work ethic and you've got to look for soft skills, definitely. Because when you're young, the only thing that sets people apart are their soft skills. Of course, when you're hiring older folks, you have to look for a mixture of technical experience as well as soft skills. So really, soft skills dominate the day no matter what. And when we see clients at AOC, for example, coming through our live programs or just people writing into the podcast, there's a lot of folks that say things like, I've been working at Amazon for 5 years and I've got stock options and I could retire rich, but why aren't I getting promoted? People are getting promoted around me. And usually the answer to somebody who's stuck at a certain level on the corporate ladder, it's not, well, I just can't get the technical skills. Usually it's a lack of soft skills. So early in the game, you want to set yourself apart by having great soft skills and actually developing them proactively. And then when you're, of course, moving up the chain, you need to constantly be developing these, because the people who don't do this well, they say things like, oh, it's all about who you know, and they throw a little bit of stank on the end of that, but really it is all about who you know, but that should be an advantage for you now that you know this, right? Now that you know that you have to be working on this, that's an actual advantage, not a disadvantage. And if you ignore this phenomenon, the fact that it really is about your relationships in your business, that's what's going to set you apart. It's not the only thing you need, but it's definitely what's going to differentiate you. If you ignore this, you're just being willfully ignorant of what we like to call the secret game being played around you.
One of the things, my primary in a disc profile, I'm a high I. So I love people. I love being around people. I love influencing people. And I find that I want to surround myself with fellow I's, right? But of course, that doesn't work for a well-rounded organization. Can you take some of the other profiles that are not naturally, influencers or charmers or connective people and really bring that out of them? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a huge process. I mean, that literally takes years. So the things that we teach on the show, for example, on the Art of Charm, body language, vocal tonality, eye contact, the way you sit, stand, walk, and talk, networking, so to speak, the way that you meet people, first impressions and follow-up, managing relationships. These are all sub-skill sets of things that people who are really naturally charismatic do. And the good news about this is that with intentional application, it sounds overwhelming, but the intentional application of these skills actually results in people who are working at this and have been working at this for a few years, they can apply it better than somebody who's naturally good at it. So we see this a lot when companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple send in their sales teams for training. We find that there's a couple guys who are naturally really good at it and they feel like, I don't even need to be here, and things like that. We also see that there's guys who are a little bit, guys and gals for that matter, who maybe are lagging a little bit behind, which is fine. We find that towards the end of the week and definitely in the months and years after their program, the live element of their program, the people who've worked more at the skills are better at it, because it's kind of like the tortoise and the hare. If you're naturally born with, quote unquote, well, no one's born with this stuff, but if you learned these skills earlier in your life due to a better environment, you had older brothers and sisters, and you had a sales job when you were 16 through 21, working at a car dealership owned by your uncle, and he taught you the ropes. You have a natural advantage there, or I should say a temporal advantage there. You can actually lose that by not consciously working on those skills. You'll just stay where you are. But of course, somebody who's naturally refining their body language, vocal tonality, eye contact, the way they sit, combined with persuasion and influence skills, that person will eventually lap you. And so that's what I think another important point is. Not only is this possible to be brought out in other people, but the idea is very well founded in science that you can become quite great at it, better than somebody who's quote unquote born with it or naturally good at it. And that should both encourage people who think, I don't have this, I'm so far behind. Can it be learned? Can it be taught? And it should scare the crap out of people who think, well, I'm already naturally good at it. I don't really need this.
Yeah.
Because I've seen many salesmen get lapped and lose big clients because somebody who's been working their tail off with these skills and sub-skills simply does it better after a while.
Yeah, it's like a muscle. You got to use it or you lose it. So that makes total sense. And it sounds like in your week-long programs that you're actually doing it. It's not just hey, here's the information, now go apply it. It sounds like what you're doing is giving some information, and then they're actually applying those skills within those boot camps. Is that correct?
Of course, yeah. So during the live program, people come in and we do a lot of direct coaching. I mean, that's the point. Yeah. We're videotaping our clients doing the drills and exercises so that you can see your body language and nonverbal communication on tape, so to speak. And that's a funny expression that won't be in use when I have kids, tape. And we also take people out in field. We have structured drills and exercises both in class and outside of class. So when you come in, you might think, well, I can't do this, or I'm already really good at this. And we'll see the truth on the video because the video never lies. And then when we take you out in field where the other people you're interacting with don't know what you've been learning and what you're up to, then we see that's where the rubber really meets the road. And so, yeah, it's great because you find some people who think they're really great at this stuff falling apart in certain areas or finding areas they need to work on that they never knew before. And you also find people who think, I can't do this, my boss made me come here. You find those people going, wow, I literally am seeing in front of my very eyes on the video that I can do this, and I just went out and did it. And that's literally the first few days of the program.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I started my podcast, I said, this is going to be easy. Talking, I've been doing that for a long, long time. This is going to be easy. And I listened to episode 1, and it's like, ooh, that was not very good. It's a skill, and the more you use it, the better. And what I love about the video as well, and this is something that I've noticed, is you can see what you look like, face on, but when the video camera's at the angle, you'll see a completely different view of yourself. And video's brilliant. That's the best way to figure out and get feedback on what you're doing because we don't see it ourselves.
Yeah, we can't see it ourselves. In fact, even if you videotape yourself, you still wouldn't see what other people see. So you get people who did perfectly fine saying, oh, I have so much to work on. This just looks weird. This just looks awkward. And they're nowhere near as bad. And then you see people who come in and go, I nailed it. And you go, actually, I would say this is a C- at best. And it just really has to do only with their perception of their own self-worth, whether inflated or deflated. Very few people have an accurate sense of that.
Yeah, you need people around you that tell you the truth. Now, I know you do this also on a personal side as well, not just on business.
Correct.
Is there any difference between the two programs, the business program and the personal program?
There is not. There is no difference. In fact, we have military programs, and the only difference is the clientele. So right now, there's a group of Green Berets that are learning some of the same things that you'll learn if you send in your sales team, which are learning the things that you'll learn when you come here by yourself because of whatever personal reason you have. So it doesn't really matter. One guy can come in for business, another person can come in for personal reasons. They can be in the same program, and they'll get slight tweaks because there's basically 100% overlap in these particular skill sets. It's just that people don't realize that there is that overlap. So they think, I need something that's going to be specific for my sales guys. Great. You know what that is? Body language and nonverbal communication, verbal persuasion and influence. Well, I want something that's going to help me become more charismatic because I just got a divorce and I want to get back in the game. Great. You know what that is? Nonverbal communication, verbal persuasion, influence, networking, and follow-up. It's all the same thing.
So do you find that with most of the clients, is it technique, is it the strategy, or is it the psychology that's keeping them back? Is it just, I don't know this, or I didn't know this, or there's something about their psychology that's blocking them?
It's definitely both. Most people have a mixture of bad or mediocre strategy or no strategy, and mediocre or bad psychology. And even people that come in that have decent strategy, people who have great advanced sales skill sets and experience and have a decent psychology for that same reason, there's always tweaks to be made. And that's what's really good about coaching this stuff is you never get somebody who goes, I already knew all that. Because someone who's a high-end salesperson, for example, or an entrepreneur knows that if they got 1% better as a result of the week-long residential program, that's going to equate to most likely millions of dollars over the course of their life and business. So there's really never anybody who's going to be able to come in and go, well, this is kind of a waste of time, or I already knew most of that stuff. Because even if you teach this stuff for a living, there's still something to be said to learn that is going to make a quantifiable difference in their life. So that's what's really great about it is you don't have to worry about whether or not somebody's too advanced or not advanced enough, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there's always another gear. There's always another level. So if you were to give the audience 2 or 3 strategies to work on in the next week in order to advance in this area, what would they be?
There's a lot that there's so many subtopics here that it's impossible to teach even if we had 5 hours, let alone the 30 minutes or so that we had here today. But if people are interested in these subjects, theartofcharm.com is the website, of course, but you're already listening to a podcast, The Art of Charm podcast. We interview top performers, we get their superpowers and deliver them to you. And of course, the toolbox has a lot on body language, nonverbal communication, persuasion, and influence. So if that's your bag, then we're a good stop for you. So I appreciate this, though.
Oh, Jordan, thank you for being on. This is really, really good information. And so many people need this. Great job. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Thor.
Who's holding you accountable? Many will answer, myself. Well, that only goes so far. You'll do more for others than you'll do for yourself. If you're not getting the results that you want, need, and desire, it comes down to your accountability. If you're ready to stop dabbling and really play full out, head on over to thorconklin.com and under services, check out our real accountability system. This is not for the timid or weak of heart. This is only for those individuals that are truly committed to taking their game to the next level.